Welcome, General Moore, Teaser. The glass slipped from my brother's hand and shattered on the marble floor. All eyes turned to me. My name wasn't even on the guest list. Now, the commander of the Pentagon had just stood up and said those words to me. I sat alone in the last row of the cathedral, where the shadows from the stained glass barely reached. The smell of old wood and fresh flowers mixed with something colder. Distance. I wasn't supposed to be here. Not in this dress uniform, not in this ceremony, not in this family. The memorial was full of polished shoes, stiff salutes, and last-minute eulogies. My father's coffin, draped in the flag he loved more than any of us, sat under the spotlight. Unlike me, Nathan, my oldest brother, stood center stage, basking in the attention like he always did. And me? I didn't even have a seat card. Hell, my name had been wiped from the program altogether. I thought I was prepared. I thought coming here would just be another ghost to bury. But nothing, not West Point, not war zones, not even my own exile, could prepare me for what was about to unfold in this room. 37 years. That's how long I've lived with the feeling that I was never enough. Not for my father, not for my brothers, not even for the mirror. In the Moore family, love came in stripes, and respect came with rank. My father, Lieutenant General Jacob Moore, ran our household like a combat zone, cold, calculated, and devoid of affection. We didn't have hugs. We had inspections. Nathan, the firstborn, was the mold, top of his class, ROTC golden boy destined to inherit the Moore legacy. Chris, the middle child, followed closely behind, quieter but compliant. Then there was me, Evelyn, the accident, the daughter, the disappointment. When I was 7, I painted a picture of our family for art class. I drew Dad, Mom, and my 2 brothers standing tall in uniform. I drew myself in a cape, holding a stethoscope. I wanted to be a combat medic. My father tore it up. Soldiers don't play pretend, Evelyn, and medics follow orders. You're too emotional to give orders, let alone save lives. When I was 10, I spent a week building a cardboard jet for my school's STEM fair. Nathan knocked it over on purpose. Dad didn't scold him. He looked at me and said, "If your construction was military grade, it wouldn't have collapsed." At 12, I was called Private Tears because I cried when Mom missed my choir recital. What they didn't know is that she was in the hospital. She died 2 months later, a supposed car crash no one in the family discussed, just a sealed casket and an order to move on. My father moved on, swiftly. My mother's photos came down, her medals stored away, her name no longer spoken. I learned early that in our house, grief was not allowed, especially not from a girl. By 16, I was desperate to matter. I memorized every field manual I could find, drilled formations in our backyard, ironed my bed sheets military tight. I trained myself to be the soldier he never thought I could be. At 17, against all odds, I earned a spot at West Point. No legacy admission, no recommendation from Dad, just my own blood and sweat. No one congratulated me, not a letter, not a visit. At the farewell dinner, Nathan toasted, "To West Point, may it straighten her out or spit her out." That toast turned out to be prophetic. My first year was brutal. I was constantly under scrutiny. Not just because I was a woman in a legacy family, but because I carried the name Moore without the blessing of the patriarch. I worked twice as hard for half the credit. Still, I made it through, but in my second year, everything fell apart. One morning, I was called into the Honor Council. They had found a sealed envelope in my footlocker with the answers to the ethics exam, the one we had just taken. I never touched that envelope, never even saw it before, but someone said I did. Witnesses claim they saw me studying late at night with something suspicious. One of them was Nathan's former roommate. Within a week, I was expelled for violating the honor code. When I called home, my father didn't let me explain. "You've disgraced this family." "Oh," he said, "you are no longer a Moore." He meant it. I was erased, photos removed. My name cut from Christmas cards. Even Chris, who had always been kind to me as a kid, blocked my number. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had been set up. Years later, a retired ethics professor at West Point confirmed my suspicions. The envelope was planted. The file was tampered with. And the name attached to the complaint? Nathan Moore. He never wanted me there. He couldn't stand the idea that I might surpass him, might take even a fraction of the spotlight that had always been his. But he didn't break me. He freed me. After being expelled, I changed my name legally. I buried Evelyn Moore, or at least the version they remembered. I joined a civilian contractor affiliated with NATO. My files became classified. My name erased from most databases. I operated under call signs, not surnames. What began as exile became evolution. I trained in conditions most soldiers wouldn't survive. Arctic, jungle, desert. I became fluent in 3 languages, expert in reconnaissance and rescue. I earned my first commendation during a failed extraction mission in eastern Ukraine. I brought back 4 Marines and a wounded journalist. From there, the missions only got harder and higher profile. I led a shadow unit that intercepted a chemical attack in Damascus. I infiltrated a warlord's compound in South Sudan. I helped train resistance forces in Eastern Europe. But the mission that changed everything happened in Aleppo. We were sent to extract a group of diplomats held hostage in a collapsing building during a rebel siege. Orders said we were to abandon the site if resistance was too high. I didn't abandon them. I disobeyed direct command, rerouted the evac chopper under fire, and personally carried the U.S. ambassador's 9-year-old son to safety, after his mother had died in front of him. That boy's father? General Horace Ellison, current chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He never forgot my face. Last year, under his authority and a classified presidential directive, I received a battlefield commission. Major General Evelyn Hart, my new legal name. I refused the press, declined the ceremony. I didn't want recognition. I wanted closure. But now, sitting in this memorial cathedral, watching my brothers give speeches about family and honor, something inside me shifts. They buried me with shame. But I rose in silence. They don't know who I am now. But they will. I didn't even know he had died. No call, no letter, not even a goddamn email. I found out my father was gone through a blurry photo on a friend's Facebook feed. Said the military seal above the caption, "In Memoriam, Lieutenant General Jacob Moore, decorated patriot, proud father." Proud father? Of who? Certainly not of me. It had been nearly 15 years since I last heard his voice, and yet I could still remember every syllable of that final sentence like it was carved into my spine. You are no longer a Moore. They never told me he was sick, never told me he was dying, never even sent a notice of his death. I would have remained in the dark entirely, if not for the woman who once scrubbed our kitchen floors, Mrs. Langley, our old housekeeper. She sent me a message through a secure proxy I'd left her years ago, in case anything happened. They're holding a full military memorial, closed guest list, your name's not on it. Thought you should know. That was all it took. I had spent over a decade operating in hostile territories, negotiating with insurgents, tracking terrorists, and dismantling paramilitary networks. But nothing ever made my hands shake like this. I wasn't going back to mourn him. I was going to bury what he built. I stared at the invitation screen on the official Department of Defense portal. My clearance level granted me access to the guest registry. I typed in Evelyn Moore. Access denied. I tried Evelyn Hart. Nothing. Under family members, Nathan Moore, Chris Moore, their wives, even their children, but not me. I had been deleted. Still, I had options. My rank, now fully restored and officially classified, came with direct orders from the Joint Chiefs. General Ellison had given me a standing override. I could have forced my way in, but I didn't want to enter as a general. I wanted to walk in as the ghost they tried to forget. So I submitted my own name through the lowest level form available, as a civilian guest of interest. No rank, no title, no salutes. I picked the plainest version of my dress uniform. No stars, no ribbons, just the insignia on my collar barely visible beneath my coat. I tucked my hair into a tight bun and left off all decorations. To them, I would look like a widow or a staffer, or maybe just someone who didn't belong. Perfect. As I packed for the trip, I pulled out a photograph I hadn't touched in 20 years. It was torn at the edges, faded from years of neglect. My mother, smiling in her Air Force blues, holding me as a baby. She used to hum when she braided my hair. I could still hear it sometimes, especially on nights when I couldn't sleep. She was the only softness I had ever known in that house. They didn't mention her on the memorial poster. Just Dad, just his sons, just the heroes. I folded the photo, placed it in the inside pocket of my uniform, close to my heart. Then I zipped up the case, stood in the mirror, and looked myself straight in the eye. You're not going for them, you're going for her, and for the girl they buried before she had the chance to become you. The Moore Memorial Ceremony was held at the Arlington Memorial Cathedral, a towering white structure reserved for war heroes and statesmen. The kind of place where silence echoed like scripture and every footstep was measured in reverence. I arrived 30 minutes early, not because I wanted to, but because I knew they wouldn't wait for me. The guard at the front entrance scanned the registry. He looked me up and down, then back to the screen. Name? Evelyn Hart, I said calmly. He scrolled. I don't see you on the official list. That's okay, I replied, handing him the laminated visitor ID I'd printed from the approval I filed online. Civilian guest of interest. He narrowed his eyes, shrugged, and waved me through. Inside, the air was heavy with formality. Polished boots, crisp uniforms, shining medals. Generals, colonels, senators, and legacy families filled the pews, each speaking in tight, hushed tones. At the far end of the hall was the casket. Draped in the American flag, flanked by an honor guard and a massive projection screen looping a tribute slideshow, Lieutenant General Jacob Moore, A Life of Service. I scanned the front row. Nathan, as expected, stood near the pulpit in full dress uniform, surrounded by Chris, their wives, and a sea of familiar and smug faces. I recognized cousins, old family friends, retired commanders. No one recognized me. Correction, no one acknowledged me. I took a seat near the back on the far left pew next to a column. Not even a program had been left on the cushion. No one sat beside me. I was invisible. That was fine. I had trained to disappear. But the irony hit hard when the usher announced, "Please take a moment to welcome and honor the surviving children of Lieutenant General Moore, Colonel Nathan Moore and Commander Christopher Moore." Applause. I remained seated. Not a glance turned my way. The slideshow continued. Picture after picture. Dad pinning Nathan's badge. Dad shaking hands with generals. Dad standing tall at the Pentagon, smiling wide. Then, family photos. One showed the entire Moore family, circa 1995, at Dad's promotion to Brigadier General. Nathan on the left, Chris to the right, Mom holding a young girl. They had blurred the girl's face, me. The next photo, our last official portrait. Mom had just passed. The photographer had me sit on the edge. They had cropped me out entirely. I wasn't even surprised. A few rows ahead, I heard someone whisper, Is that Evelyn? No way. I thought she died. Didn't she marry some bartender or go off to Costa Rica? The laughs were small but sharp. Then someone behind me muttered louder than intended, Honestly, I thought she'd show up in ripped jeans and a protest sign. Glad she's keeping quiet. The humiliation came in waves, not violent, but precise, like paper cuts to the soul. The service began. Nathan took the stage with calculated grace, each step like a parade march. His speech dripped with legacy. My father was a soldier, but more than that, he was a builder. He built this family, brick by brick, rank by rank. He paused for effect. Not all bricks hold up under pressure. But the ones that did? Those are the ones standing before you today. The crowd chuckled knowingly. My hands curled into fists inside my lap. Then Chris stepped up, the more diplomatic one. Dad believed in standards. He didn't sugarcoat things. If you didn't meet the line, he let you fall. That's leadership. That's love. Even when it doesn't look like it. Love? My father once forced me to do push-ups on the gravel until my palms bled, because I spoke out of turn during a family dinner. That wasn't love. That was control. A few guests began circulating refreshments. A server passed right by me, skipped me entirely. No water, no program, no courtesy. I raised my hand slightly. "Excuse me?" He blinked at me, then walked away. Behind me, a voice chuckled. "Maybe you're just not on the list." Twice in one lifetime. I almost got up and left. Almost. But then, a tap on my shoulder. A tall man in a dark suit leaned down, subtle, confident. "Ma'am, we may need to make a seating adjustment." I blinked. "Excuse me?" He handed me a folded note. On it, handwritten in calligraphy. "Please proceed quietly to the front left aisle. You will be introduced shortly. H.E. H.E. General Horace Ellison." I felt my throat tighten. Across the room, Nathan was preparing to close the ceremony with a final tribute. The slideshow paused. The screen behind him went black. Then the audio glitched. A mic crackled. And I realized the show wasn't over. Not yet. The note in my hand trembled slightly as I stood. I hadn't been called to the front of a room since West Point, and the last time that happened, it ended with dishonor and disgrace. My instinct screamed, "Don't go." But a colder voice inside me whispered, "You didn't come this far to sit in the back." I rose and walked quietly down the side aisle, eyes locking on me like sniper scopes. A few guests blinked. Some squinted, trying to place the face. Others looked away altogether, as if pretending I wasn't there would make it true. A staff sergeant in ceremonial uniform nodded and pulled out a chair in the front left row, reserved, empty until now, right across from the podium, right in full view. Nathan's voice faltered as I sat down. He recovered quickly, clearing his throat. As I was saying, my father left behind a legacy, not just in uniform, but in family. The sons he raised, men of valor, discipline, and unwavering loyalty, will carry on that legacy. He didn't glance at me, but I saw his jaw twitch. It's not blood alone that makes family. It's who stands beside you in battle, who carries your name with pride. The implication was clear. I was a deserter, a shame, a ghost who'd abandoned the flag, but I wasn't the one who'd buried a sister alive. The slideshow resumed behind him, this time flashing images of military plaques, academy diplomas, and family gatherings over the years. In not a single one was I visible, not even as a blur. Someone had meticulously gone through every frame, every photo, every year, and erased me. Even Mom's funeral photo, the one where I clutched her folded flag and cried in my only black dress, had been cropped. Only Nathan and Dad remained, as if I had never existed. I swallowed hard. The old ache throbbed again behind my rib cage, but I held still. A woman seated beside me leaned over. "Are you with the Ellisons?" I looked at her, straight-faced. "In a manner of speaking," Nathan wrapped up with flair. "Today we send off a soldier, a father, a general, but most of all, a man whose example will shape generations." Applause. Then he added smugly, "We invite all recognized family to join us at the reception hall for the honor toast." Recognized family. The words cut sharper than a bayonet. As people began to stand, a soft voice broke the murmur. "Excuse me. Before the program ends, one last acknowledgement must be made." The voice didn't come from the pulpit. It came from the back of the cathedral. Everyone turned. A tall man in full 4-star uniform stepped forward, flanked by 2 aides and a security detail. His presence shifted the air like a pressure change. General Horace Ellison. You could hear the intake of breath from a dozen officers. Nathan looked stunned. Chris paled. The general walked with precision down the aisle. When he reached the front, he turned, not to Nathan, not to the audience, but to me. "With permission," he said to the master of ceremonies, who only nodded, mouth agape. "There is someone here today whose service, sacrifice, and honor match, if not exceed, the very legacy we celebrate." The crowd quieted, fully now. No whisper, no cough, just waiting. She has served in every major conflict of the last 2 decades. She has saved lives, led battalions, and carried out missions so classified, even I wasn't briefed on all the details. I didn't move. My pulse hammered in my throat. She operates with humility, with courage, and, as I have witnessed personally, with unmatched loyalty to the flag this man once held dear. Nathan was frozen. It is my distinct honor to introduce someone who has more than earned the right to carry the Moore name, whether they claim her or not. He turned to me. The moment froze, like a 1,000-camera flash suspended mid-blink. Welcome Major General Evelyn Hart, or as we once knew her, Evelyn Moore. The silence cracked. Chairs creaked. Someone gasped. A glass clinked to the floor. Nathan's eyes went wide. Chris dropped his program. I stood. Slowly, calmly. Every face turned toward me. Some in shock. Others in shame. "General?" a voice whispered behind me. She's a general?" I took a step forward, then another, each one louder than the last. The weight of 2 decades of silence lifted with every footfall. General Ellison saluted. I returned it. He leaned in, just loud enough for me to hear. "It's your room now, General." I stood still for a breath, and in that breath, I saw every version of myself flicker through the room like ghosts. The trembling teenager banished from West Point, the daughter who never made the family photo wall, the soldier who bled in sandstorms and shadows, unknown and unseen. All of them were watching me now. I stepped up to the podium, the weight of 2 decades pressing on my shoulders. But it didn't feel heavy, it felt earned. The microphone adjusted automatically. A soft screech echoed as I cleared my throat. "My name," I said, voice steady, "is Major General Evelyn Hart." A hush fell deeper. I was born Evelyn Moore, daughter of Lieutenant General Jacob Moore, sister to Colonel Nathan Moore, but for most of my life I've been edited out. I looked directly at Nathan. He flinched. I was erased from this family's story, not because I failed, but because I was inconvenient, because I challenged the narrative. A few people shifted in their seats. I was accused of dishonor, expelled from West Point, condemned by my own blood without evidence, without a hearing, without a second thought. Nathan opened his mouth, then closed it. His face was red now, flush with panic. But what no one knew, not even those who stood on this very stage moments ago, is that I never stopped serving. I never stopped fighting. I paused, letting the words settle. I led rescue teams into Aleppo, Kabul, and Fallujah. I brought home soldiers no one thought would survive. I defused bombs with my bare hands, stitched wounds in moonlight, and gave commands in 6 languages. Eyes widened, back straightened. And in one mission, I continued, voice rising just slightly, I disobeyed a direct order because I refused to leave a 9-year-old boy behind in a collapsing building. That boy's name was Micah Ellison. General Ellison gave a small, solemn nod. He's alive because I chose principle over protocol, and for that, I was promoted, quietly, without press, because real honor doesn't need a microphone. The room was dead silent, not even a cough, not a shuffle, just breath. Held hostage. "But I'm not here to impress you," I said. "I didn't come to reclaim a seat at your table. I came to say something I've never been allowed to say." I turned toward my father's flag-draped casket. "You were wrong." A ripple of shock moved through the pews like wind through dry leaves. "You said I wasn't strong enough, not sharp enough, not worthy. But it wasn't strength you demanded. It was silence. And I refuse to wear silence like a uniform anymore." I turned back to the crowd. "You taught me discipline, yes. You taught me precision. But everything that made me dangerous, that made me unstoppable, that made me a general?" I placed my hand over the inside pocket of my coat, where my mother's photo rested. That came from her. Gasps this time. Real ones. She was erased just like me. But not today. I took a step back from the mic. General Ellison stepped forward. "By authority of the Joint Chiefs and in presence of this military assembly," he announced, Major General Evelyn Hart is hereby posthumously recognized as the rightful and honored daughter of Lieutenant General Jacob Moore. A stunned silence. Then, applause. Hesitant at first, then growing. Nathan's face was a war zone. Shock, fury, shame, disbelief, all clashing at once. He took a step forward, reaching toward the mic. "Evelyn, I stopped him with a raised hand. "I know exactly what you did, Nathan. West Point, the fake envelope, the false statement. You tried to cut me down before I could stand." His face paled. Several guests turned to stare at him. And yet, here I am. General Ellison spoke again. "As of this morning, an internal investigation into fraudulent conduct at the Academy has been reopened. Colonel Moore, you will be contacted separately." Nathan's mouth fell open. Chris leaned away from him, slow and deliberate. For a moment, everything was still. Then I saluted the casket. "Goodbye, Father," I said. "Not because you earned it, but because I did." And with that, I turned, back straight, head high, and walked out the center aisle. This time, no one looked away. They looked at me, and they saw. The sun was just beginning to dip behind the cathedral as I stepped outside. A cool breeze swept across the steps, brushing past my face like a gentle nod from the universe itself, a quiet acknowledgement. You made it. You're free. I stood there for a moment, letting the air fill my lungs. It was the first real breath I'd taken in weeks, maybe years. Behind me, the service hall had erupted into a different kind of ceremony, not one of honor, but of reckoning. Nathan hadn't followed me. He couldn't. The whispers had already begun before I reached the last marble step. "Did you know she was a general?" "I heard she saved a U.S. ambassador's kid." "Then, wasn't she kicked out of West Point?" "Apparently, her brother did it to protect his own reputation. They say silence is power. But today, truth was louder." I walked toward the parking lot, passing polished cars and saluting officers. One of them, a young lieutenant, froze as I neared. He snapped to attention. "Ma'am, it's an honor," I nodded. "At ease, Lieutenant." His face flushed. He'd seen everything. So had everyone else. A new kind of quiet followed me now. Not the shunning silence of before, but the heavy, respectful hush reserved for those who had earned their place. Mrs. Langley stood by the side entrance, tears in her eyes. "I knew you'd come back," she said, holding my hands. "Your mother would have been so proud. She was watching today. I know it." I didn't have words, only a soft squeeze of her hand in return. We both looked up at the building that once held the ghosts of everything I'd lost. It didn't feel heavy anymore. I headed back to my hotel, a small, quiet place outside Arlington, with no press, no reception hall, no fake condolences, just stillness. There, I opened my bag and took out the photo. My mother in her blues, smiling. I placed it on the nightstand. "I did it, Mom," I whispered. "They know now. You were never the problem, and neither was I." That night, I slept without dreams. The weeks that followed unfolded quickly. Nathan was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. I didn't pursue charges. I didn't need to. Public exposure was enough. He'd built his identity on an illusion, one that cracked on the biggest stage of his life. The man who once erased me from every photo couldn't erase his guilt from every headline. The military community responded swiftly, quiet nods in passing, respectful salutes, and from some letters, handwritten, thank yous from soldiers I'd led in the shadows, now coming into the light. Even Chris, my quiet, complicit middle brother, he reached out. "I didn't know the full truth," he said on a short call, "but I should have asked. I'm sorry." I accepted his apology. Some doors don't close with anger. They close with accountability. Eventually, a formal recognition was sent from the Department of Defense, an invitation to receive a public award, the Valor of Silent Citation for exceptional service under classified status. I declined. Instead, I asked that the award be named after someone else. "Name it after my mother," I told them. "Captain Margaret Hart, Air Force logistics, never recognized, but without her, I wouldn't be who I am. They agreed, and just like that, her name, the one they buried in a closed casket in silence, was etched into military legacy. Months later, I stood again in Arlington, but this time at a smaller, unmarked grave, my mother's. I had finally tracked it down, no headstone, just a placeholder plaque. Like she was never meant to be remembered. I brought flowers, lilies, her favorite, and a new plaque. One I had engraved myself, Captain Margaret Hart, beloved mother, quiet warrior, eternal compass. You were always enough. I placed it gently into the earth. Then I stood, saluted, and whispered, "Rest now. I've taken the flag, and I will carry it the way you always hoped someone would." I didn't return to the Moore estate. I didn't need to. The little girl who once stood in the shadows of her father's uniform had grown into a woman who built her own rank with sweat, fire, and silence. My name was no longer missing from the list because I had written my own. And this time, it would never be erased.